So in our next step we're going to use Meteor Methods, and Meteor Methods is a very interesting concept that Meteor gives us. Because we can run JavaScript code anywhere, Meteor Methods, it's possible to run them first on the client and then they will run again on the server. Why is that good? It means that the actions that the methods do will happen instantly on our client, and then later on the server, and if there's a difference, then the server will update back the client. It means it will give us latency compensation. It means that our applications will do stuff instantly instead of waiting for the server response. And that's very interesting concept and very nice thing that Meteor does. So the first thing we need to do is actually to create our methods, and we're going to create our first method that is called invite. We're going to invite a user and we're going to send him a mail and give him permissions to look at our party. So because Meteor methods can run anywhere, we're going to write it not on the client or on the server. We're going to use the model or any other place, but I think it's nice to put Meteor methods that are about parties inside the parties file. So let's just start with that. So when we do Meteor methods, we just write Meteor methods. And then we're going to create objects that has different methods inside. So the first method we're going to call is invite. We're going to create is called invite, and this is a function, and it will take a party ID we want to invite to, and a user ID that we want to invite this user ID to our party. So Meteor also gives us like this check function that helps us check if party ID is a string, for example, or it's the same with user ID. So we'll check that. And now we're gonna call party, and we're gonna get our party from the party ID. So we're gonna take it from our parties with find one. And because we have parties running everywhere, it's okay. We can like take the party from a local machine and to run on the client and then later on the server. So everything we're gonna write here is a code that can run anywhere. So then let's check if the party actually exists. And if not, we can throw an error. So we can throw new Meteor error like 404, no such party. Then we can check if the party's owner is not the current user, which we don't need to invite him. So if it's not the current user, this dot user ID, and that user ID is a little bit like the publish function. It gives you instantly the current user that is logged in. It's just a helper method, a helper variable. So again, in this time we're going to throw an error and say no such party. Here we can actually say, instead of no such party, we can say can't be invited to your own party. And then let's check if the party is public, then there's no need to invite anyone. So if the party is public, let's throw another error. It's not 404 because it exists already. And let's write that party is public. Can't invite to a public party. Okay. Now we need to see that the person that actually is inviting has the permission to do it. So let's see. So first of all, if the current user ID is not equal to the party's owner, yeah. So yeah, this. So from that point, I'm just gonna copy the rest of the function, but I will explain it for you to save time. So this time now we're gonna check if the current user is not if the user invited is not the owner, and if it's not already invited, then we're gonna call Meteor, the Mongo API to update the party, and we're setting the party ID, and then we're using the Mongo syntax to add to set, and we're adding the user. And this Mongo syntax run both on the client and both on the server. So it will happen instantly on the client, and if there's a problem with it on the server, it will do it on the server and roll back. So we'll have everything instantly. Next thing is we want to send him an email. Now, email we can do only on the server. So this specific thing will check and make everything inside it work only if we are on the server. So you can see that we have a function that can run anywhere, and only a specific small thing will run only on the server. And then we're going to call email send and just send him an email saying, you are invited, go and check it out. Now, we emailed the guy, so we need to also add an email package. So we're going to do Meteor add email. And that's everything we need to do to send emails with Meteor, which is super simple. Now the next thing we want to do is to call that function from the client. So we want to call it from our party details controller. And let's add a function. Let's call it scope invite. And it will get a user. And now we have to call a function, we can do $meteor.call and then name the function. So the first parameter is the name of the function, which is invite. And then all the rest of the parameters are the parameters that we're going to send to our method. So the first thing is the party's ID. And then the second thing is the user we want to invite and his ID. Now, with angular-meteor, when the method will be called, then it will return a promise after it happened on the server. So, after it will actually happen on the server, we'll get a promise with some data that we'll get, or we get an error with the error function. So, let's handle that. So just let's write console log success inviting, and you can do something more fancy with it, or if we have an error we can say error and print the error, and again you can do something more fancy with this thing. So now we need to call that function from our views. So let's go to party details and let's add a function to each user that we have here. Let's add a button. It's called invite, and with ngClick we'll call the invite method, and we're gonna send the user. Now, the next thing we need to do, we need to check for that logic on the publish method, because if you are invited, you can now see the party that you are invited to. So let's add this logic here. So we have if it's public, and we're checking if you are the owner, and another possibility is if you are invited. So if this user ID is invited and if this user ID exists. Now we need to actually make the same thing on the publish count, because now if you can see it on the count of the parties that you can see, you want to add also the invited parties. So let's add it also to here, so that pagination will still work in a good way. So let's run Meteor and check that functionality. So we have a party here. Now let's take a party that is not public, like this one. This is not a public party, so let's invite the URI222 user. So first let's log in here and see. This user doesn't have party 23. Let's change the name for invited party, and still we don't have it here. Now let's invite the user, and you see that he is invited here. Now also, if we look at the console log, then the contact doesn't have an email, but contact email is not defined. So it tried to send an email, but it didn't work. So let's look at why it didn't work. Oh, we forgot, we copied that code, but there is no such thing as contact email. So let's create that function. And this function can be a global function, which means you can just define it here. And it will get a user. There's a problem in copying code. So, and we're gonna check if user emails and exist, and if user emails length exist. And then we're gonna return the user's first email address. So emails 0 address, and if not, then we're going to use the services. So if the user has services like Facebook, and the user has services Facebook, and the user has an email in the Facebook services. So like that, then return the user's Facebook email. Else return null. Now let's run it again. And let's go to another party that we're not invited to. So first let's remove one of our parties, and let's go to fourth party that we're not invited to. Let's invite, and you can see that we got a inviting success. And now I can see it, and also I get an email for it. You can see the fourth party here. So that's nice, and also you can see that Uri222 is not here anymore because he's already invited with the filters that we did before. Now that's nice, but I also want to RSVP to our party. So for that, let's add another function. So again, I will go here, and I have my invite function, and then I'm going to add another object, and we call it RSVP. Now, to save time, although it's not the best thing to do, we're going to copy the code here. That function. And go through it again. So we're checking here that that party ID is a string and RSVP is a string, and then checking if the user is logged in, and if the RSVP is yes, no, or maybe. And this is how we're gonna get our RSVP response. The user can respond in yes, no, or maybe, and then we're gonna create a list of that. Then we're going to take out our party by its ID, see if the party exists and who is the owner. And then we're just going to take all the RSVPs of that current user and see if the current user hasn't already RSVP'd. And if it's not, then we're going to update the party with the RSVP. And again, you can see the Mongo syntax here with the $set and the nested object in Mongo. So we have an array of RSVPs, and inside it we have that specific RSVP of the RSVP of the user. And now here it says that Minimongo doesn't support yet the $modifier. This is why we're checking if we are in the server or not. I think that on the new Meteor version that comes out, I think it's 1.1 or something like that, then they support all the Mongo 2.6 syntax on the Minimongo as well, and then this thing won't be necessary. Yes, so this is our Meteor method, and now we need to call it. So again, let's go to our party details, and this time let's add the function that's called RSVP, and it will get the party ID, and it will get the RSVP response. And inside it will do Meteor call, and the first parameter is the name of the function, RSVP, and then we're going to send the party ID and the RSVP response. And then again we're going to get the promise with a success or an error. So let's handle that with simple console log and success responding and print the data, or a console log error and print the error. Okay, and the data that is returned here is defined by the Meteor method. So whatever data you want to send back, you can send back, and it will happen here. Now, that's nice. Let's add actually buttons to call that RSVP. So let's go to party details, and let's do it on the from the list. You can RSVP. There's no need for you to get inside. So let's place it here on the parties list controller. And now let's go to the list, and let's add for each party you can add, let's say, input, and is a button, and let's say this button will show I'm in, and if you click it, it will call the RSVP method with the current party's ID and the response yes. And let's do the same, but with maybe and with no. Great. So now let's add also a code that says that shows who is coming and who is not. So we can actually use filters for that. So let's add here another div and just say who is coming, and or let's say how many people are coming. So first let's do everyone who says yes. So the way to do it is actually we have party.rsvps. This is the array of parties, and we're gonna filter that for. We're gonna use the built-in filter of Angular, and in this filter we're just gonna do RSVP equals to yes. And no, we don't, but we want to take the length. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna surround this with parentheses and then call length, and that's it. And let's do the same for maybe and no. And now let's display also the list of the and yeah, maybe and no. And now let's display actually the list of users that are coming or not coming to our party. So let's write this and let's iterate over all the users and repeat. And again, we're going to do basically the same. RSVPs, we're going to get a RSVP in party RSVPs. We're gonna filter by RSVP. Yes. And inside we want to display the user. So we already have a function of get user by ID. So we're gonna call get user by ID, and we're gonna take that RSVP and get the user ID from it. So RSVP.user, which holds the user ID, and then we're going obviously want to display the name. So we have already the filter that does display name, and that's it. Now we can just copy that and do the same for maybe and no. And there's nothing here that will tell us if this what is yes and what is no. So let's just add as well, like something like RSVP dot RSVP, the actual response. Let's copy that as well. Great. So let's run it and see how it looks. Okay. Let's refresh. And now we can see there's a who is coming, and let's go here, refresh that, and I was invited to the fourth party, and let's click maybe, and you can see that there's one maybe coming, and that's user 222. And you can also say no, or I'm in. And you can see that it's happening instantly, and then after that going to the server and updating the other client. And it's all real time, so it's pretty impressive. Now let's look at also like users that are invited and haven't responded. So let's go to let's add it just underneath here and do a list users who haven't responded, and let's iterate over them. So let's do ng repeat, and then we need to get all the user who haven't responded. So let's create a function for that. So let's go here and create a function called outstanding invitations. Scope.outstanding invitations. And that function will get a party, and then we'll get all the users. So again, we can use underscore to do that. So let's filter from all the users. For each user, we're gonna check if if it's invited, and then if it's RSVP. So let's return and then run contains, and here party invited for the list of invited, and check if our users is inside. And also we're gonna check if we can't find find where party RSVPs. This is the list of RSVPs, and we can't find anywhere inside that the user is equal to our user ID. And that's the part. That's the outstanding invitations. Now, again, we're going through our users, and for each user, we're checking if he is invited, and also he is not in the RSVPs. So now let's go take this function and let's do invited user, because this user is invited in outstanding invitations for the current party. And now let's display that user. So invited user, and again we have the display name filter. Great. Now, one thing is that we use scope users here, but we haven't defined it at all. We just call here the subscribe method. So instead of that, let's do scope users equals for Meteor collection, and this is actually Meteor users, and we don't want to update that, so we're going to send false, and then we're going to subscribe into that. Now let's refresh and see if we can see all of that here. So let's take the third party. So right now this user Uri222 is not invited into that, so he can't see that. Let's invite him, and then he can see that. But still he haven't responded, so we have users who haven't responded, Uri222. But now, if I'll click maybe, there's no users who haven't responded, and Uri2 has responded with maybe, and there's only one user that responded with maybe, and everything runs everywhere. And this just shows you how powerful the Meteor methods are and how functional they are. So